Hey all, I've just come in from a freezing cold cigarette outside. It's -1 out there right now, so just trying to warm up. And I thought, what better to get the old blood pumping than the just rage-inducing display of Nathan Thompson, trying to debate flat Earth with people. So let's continue his assault on people at the airport in part 2.
It's pressurized. And,
Yeah,
and NASA claims that it rests against a boundary of space that's a 10 to the -17 torr vacuum.
Oh yeah. You know, the atmosphere is pretty thin.
It's not exactly that our atmosphere rests against the 10 to the -17 torr vacuum of space. Just like the pressure within the atmosphere, like everything is a gradient. As we reach out to the moon, we're at 10 to the -11 torr, and it continues to, go down from there. It's a gradual gradient in pressure, due in part to Earth's gravity. It holds the majority of the pressure close to the surface, and it gets lower and lower, as molecules work to try to reach escape velocity. We do have some molecules that actually do reach escape velocity, notably hydrogen and helium, and so they will leave essentially Earth's atmosphere. But as you get further and further up there is still pressure. 10 to the -17 torr is still a positive pressure. It's just a very small one.
And at a certain point, it just gets very, it just dissipates.
So it goes from very thin.
It's thick nearest the surface, and then it attenuates as you get farther and farther out in space into the vacuum of space.
Exactly. It just keeps getting thinner and thinner until it reaches equilibrium, as it were, with the pressure of space. It's not like most flat earthers try to argue a sudden switch from high pressure within Earth's atmosphere to low pressure in the vacuum of space, which isn't a perfect vacuum by any means. Again, that is one of their main arguments, is just to try and look at it as you've got this incredibly high pressure that should, without a container, escape into the lack of pressure or very low pressure of space. And it's not. It's just a gradual reduction. The molecules are spreading further and further out to, once you get out there, where you've literally got, I think, like one molecule within a few meters cubed or something. I'd have to double check that to be sure, but yeah, it's very thin up there, but it is a gradual reduction.
So we got 14.7.
So you're saying we have no barrier between our pressurized atmosphere and the vacuum of space.
Exactly.
But wouldn't that be a violation of the second law of thermodynamics?
No.
The second law of thermodynamics, and again, I'd love to know, I don't think I've ever heard, Mr. Thompson explain what the second law of thermodynamics is exactly, and it has been worded different by many different scientists, and it can also be termed different depending on what field we're using it for at the moment, or at that time. But in essence, it deals with entropy. As molecules create heat, they will naturally tend to dissipate or reach a state of disorder, which does happen. We do radiate energy. Like the Earth is a closed system as far as most matter is concerned, but when it comes to energy, it is in all effect an open system. We do lose energy into space, and we do receive energy, most notably solar energy, which is then turned into different processes such as photosynthesis in plants and whatnot. So it mostly has to do with entropy, and we are in a non-equilibrium state. Technically, there is always going to be that loss through entropy. That doesn't in any way mean that our current model, the globe that we live on, and that has been proved, breaks the second law of thermodynamics. That's just a complete misunderstanding of how that law works.
No.
What is the second law of thermodynamics?
I can't remember.
So you know that it's not a violation, but then I asked you what the second law of thermodynamics is, and you couldn't tell me what the second law of thermodynamics is.
I know, but I know what the atmosphere is around Earth. You're sitting here right now and you're breathing, and if you take out a...
Yeah.
See, you strike up a random conversation with someone, which again I wouldn't term a debate. I'm assuming that you do, considering you claim to have debated over 10,000 people. I think FTFE worked it out, and in the time you've been studying flat Earth, that would mean you've debated like 4 people per day, every day, which just seems a little unbelievable. But just because this man is not able to recite the second law of thermodynamics to you, like off the top of his head, doesn't mean he doesn't understand it. I mean, your brain's going to store a certain amount of stuff. If it doesn't have to use it all the time, it's going to forget things. It doesn't mean you've completely forgotten how they work. And just trying to put someone on the spot like that to, I don't know, it's just to make yourself feel better or think that you're proving yourself correct is quite petty. It's not a debate that you've pre-arranged and been allowed to prepare for. So that's quite a weak attack there, Nathan.
Yeah, of course, I agree.
It's 14.7. If you get up to, I think, 67 miles, I believe, is
I agree. Pressure
boundary
decreases.
where space officially kind of opens. But you can still see atmosphere.
What he's referring to there with the 67 miles is the Kármán line, which if it's like a passenger plane, that is treated differently as NASA would be launching a satellite into orbit or a shuttle out into space. Is just to have a documented boundary. Of course, as we learn more about the atmosphere and space itself, the actual boundary of space kind of changes. We've learned now that Earth's atmosphere extends like past the moon, almost the same distance to the moon over again. There's so many different areas to try to quantify it and what distances they'd be at, that it is really hard to properly, I think, say where space begins. There is only a max altitude that planes can get to, even planes used by like the different air forces of the world. There are max altitudes, and the Kármán line is to sort of separate where we can go and not be considered a space vehicle, as it were.
I agree that the atmosphere decreases with altitude. It's but that's easily explained by hydrostatics.
So yeah, it's hydrostatics. It's interesting that you bring that up to explain the pressure gradient. Yeah, hydrostatics does explain the pressure gradient really in a way, or it can be used to measure it, because the atmosphere is technically a fluid, and obviously, just like before we hit sea level, go from very high pressure depths to low pressure depths, and then we hit sort of station pressure, and then that's where you've got the line between sea and air, and then pressure gets less again. The problem with using with you choosing to use the hydrostatic equation is that one of the key components of the hydrostatic formula is the gravitational constant, and many times you've said obviously that gravity is not real, because that's what most flat earthers tout. So again, you can't really cherry pick science to suit your needs and then call the rest pseudoscience because it doesn't agree with your model. It just removes all validity from your argument.
That's why we have a gradient, because we live in a closed dynamic system where the gas is homogeneous and anisotropic. It's different in all directions and constantly moving around. Yeah, so I'm still asking, how do you have gas pressure without a container?
So yeah, gas molecules are constantly moving. They are doing work. That doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to move into low pressure, because again, we do have gravity acting on them. There's gases that are denser than air at ground level, where you can literally, I think FTFE showed an experiment, I'd have to look that up, I forget what gas it was, but there's a gas where this experiment showed them pouring it into an open container, and that container then sinking, and it was already being suspended, so obviously in another gas, it was keeping it up, and then it sank down. These molecules in that heavier gas, they're still moving around, but they can't because they've got more mass, they cannot do enough work to escape into lower pressure gradients. And that is the, you know, one of the main things that establishes the gradient is their mass against how much work they can do to try and you know, try and escape it. As I said earlier, hydrogen and helium are two gases that can reach escape velocity and actually escape our atmosphere because of how much work they do, how much energy they can let out, but also how light they are, how little mass they have compared to the other mass, you know, masses of other gases around them.
I can still have gas pressure. Well, I think it's the pressure of the atmosphere. All of it. If you measure the air, it's got pressure to it. I mean, it's got weight, and that weight is bearing down.
Okay,
on
but
the
gas
planet.
pressure is defined as gas pressing out in all directions. So if you're saying that all the weight is just pressing down,
Right.
that's
Gravity.
a violation of gas pressure.
I think here, you know, it's again, it's a misunderstanding of scientific principle. Okay, over here, I think around, you know, once we go into secondary school around 11, we learn that yeah, gas molecules do move in every direction, but gas pressure is defined as it's the sort of force of the gas, you know, which is mass times acceleration, and it is basically that force measured with direction against a surface area, and that's how you can measure gas pressure. It doesn't need to be inside a container. You can measure gas pressure on the outside of a container. You could technically measure the atmospheric pressure, you know, at specific points on your body, going by surface area, and you can measure it against any surface. And again, and it doesn't have to be a physical container like the experiment, you know, that I mentioned that FTFE showed, and I will have to, I'll try and track that down for a later video. But you know, yeah, it is being done with a container, but there's no lid, you know, so it doesn't have to be this closed container that all flat earthers are saying it has to have. And that again goes with like our atmosphere. It is not a closed container. It is a container that's created by gravity, you know, and is then separated into gradients based on mass and how much work the molecules can do to reach different levels. There are sort of container arguments, you know, and you can say sort of gravity does create our container, which in essence it does, but you don't really need the container. One example people use obviously for gas pressure inside a container is when you blow up a balloon. You can blow, you know, use your own breath to blow the outside of that balloon and make it move. That's because you are creating an air pressure, you know, acting as a force on that object. So it doesn't have to have a container, it doesn't have to be inside the container even to measure. But for all intents and purposes, you know, yeah, we do have a container. It's sort of caused by gravity and it sort of radiates out. But I don't like to call it a container because that suggests there is a physical barrier, and really there isn't. You know, gravity's just holding it in until we just until the atmosphere just reduces to that sort of 10 to the negative 17 Torr value of interstellar space.
Well, you know, there may be a subtlety that you're thinking about, but
Yeah, I know. The subtlety is that space is all fake. Yeah, it doesn't exist. That's why we didn't go to the moon. That's why it's all cartoons.
oh, okay, all right.
You know, of course, this is another argument that all flat earthers go with, is that space is fake. Basically, you know, if you have to believe so many things are fake that we've proven work, you know, with so many different variables in our model. And again, you know, we've gone to space, we've turned around and taken pictures of Earth, and you can prove it's a globe. If you have to, if you have to say that so many different things are fake in order to just even try and make your model, which doesn't actually have a model, but your argument believable to people, then there's something wrong with your argument. And if you guys are as scientific as you like to say you are, and you know, you really looked at empirical data and whatnot, then you'd stop lying to yourselves and lying to so many other people out there. We stopped believing the Earth was flat centuries and centuries ago. I think it's like 2,000 to 2,500 years ago, and it was proved, like back then, you know, with a limited understanding of space and, you know, what was actually going on. And now that we've reached new technological heights, you know, we've proven it time and time again. So it just baffles me that to believe your model, you just have to deny so many things that have been proven to be true.
Oh, you don't want to talk to me anymore, right?
Well, nah, I mean, you know, NASA, a good thing about it, what a good thing is that, you know, in the not too distant future, hopefully in the next 4 or 5 years, NASA will again try to land.
We allegedly went in the 60s when we had turn-dial telephones.
There is no allegedly, you know, we did go to the moon. Yeah, you know, you see when we had turn-dial telephones. You know, we had a lot of technology out there. When I was young, we didn't have mobile phones yet, but you could still fly all over the world. Different technologies advance at different rates. And then there's the whole argument that why don't we go to the moon again? And how was it that all the technology that got us to the moon has been lost or, you know, destroyed? Again, this is something where flat earthers just sort of, and most conspiracy theorists even, they find an argument as soon as they research something enough to find something that they think agrees with their model, they stop research, which is, again, that's not the scientific method. You keep researching, you try and test, you know, you want to find the most probable out. So they look at this loss of technology or destruction of the technology as, well, that seems a bit fishy. The thing is the different space agencies contract out to different factories to manufacture the stuff they want, you know, based on specific specifications. And when they've accomplished that goal, or if something happens, if there's changes in management, or changes in politics, or anything to do with the business, obviously, you know, sometimes they cut ties with certain manufacturers. They get new manufacturers. If you're one of the manufacturers that is, you know, being let go from the government contract, technically, you know, this is, I think it is protected on the military stuff, but either way, you know, you're going to get rid of most of that stuff. You're not working with that company anymore. You know, you're going to destroy the products, possibly destroy the blueprints, I don't know, but that is why a lot of the stuff has been lost. And then when it comes to getting us back up there again, it costs billions and billions of dollars to get us to the moon. You know, it costs so much money to do anything involving space, and we've already been to the moon, you know, so why do they really want to waste money on doing that again anytime soon when they have other stuff they want to focus on to help us understand the known universe and help us constantly try to expand further? Once you discover a country, like way back when, you know, when the world, you know, hadn't been discovered completely, once you've discovered it, are you then going to be like, you know what, I want to discover that one again? Or are you going to keep reaching further? That costs money too. You're always going to invest in trying to go further. And conspiracy theorists just don't look into the full picture. They don't try to research as much as possible. You know, even if they find like an answer that goes with their model or their argument, they should continue to research at least for a while to see if they can disprove their argument. That is the scientific method. You know, you have a hypothesis and then you research, you test, and, you know, your goal is to try to disprove your argument, not just find something that goes with it and say, okay, that's good. And that's why it's called a scientific theory, you know, always. That is the highest, like, level. It doesn't become like scientific fact. It's a theory because as technology, you know, as technology improves, there's always a chance that we can either like completely flip up on its head, you know, our understanding of a certain thing, or at least expand on it a little.
Right. And Don Petit, who's a NASA astronaut from the ISS, said we lost the technology, we destroyed it, and it's a painful process to build it back.
Well, it certainly is. I mean,
when do we destroy technology?
we don't destroy. You never
That's what
destroy
Don Petit said.
I don't know who Don Petit is.
He's an astronaut that's been on the ISS.
Okay, well, is it Petit or Petit?
Don Petit.
Yeah, okay, got it. All right. But, you know, When you start manufacturing something, you've got blueprints, you've got designs, but you don't keep those lines going. Don't go to any industry and talk to them about it. They don't keep lines of production or technology that's 20 and 30.
See, again, I love this bloke that is that Nathan is talking to right here, because you know he knows what he's talking about, you know, and Nathan's constantly trying to box him in, and you know, yeah, the guy may not be able to pop the second law of thermodynamics off the top of his head, or he might not, you know everything to do with stuff outside of his given field. But he knows enough to understand our model, you know, and and obviously know how things work. And again, production changes, the companies change, and a lot of stuff can get lost in transition. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this guy. I think Nathan didn't pick someone to have a quick debate with, for an easy, or he hoped for an easy win, but he picked the wrong person, I think.
I'm not saying lines of production. He says they destroy technology. That's what he said. But we haven't been back in 50 years.
Again, yeah, we haven't been back in, well, God, it's over 50 years now, isn't it? But we keep pushing forward. We're looking to land on Mars and go out even further. I do want to look up something that I'd like to, probably bring up in another video, because I believe there's, I heard some billionaire has, I think he's actually purchased a space flight, and he's going to take, I think he's going to take 4 people, like just, regular people up to space. So I heard about that. I haven't had a chance to look into it yet. But that's definitely something I think worth looking into.
And you're saying we need 4 or 5 more years to go there.
Yes. I mean, right now, if you wanted to go on the NASA website and look for the space launch system,
yeah, I do. Every launch is parabolic. So the rockets go up, and then they level out, and then they come back down towards their Earth.
See, and this can be like one of 2 things. I tend to think it's going to be the second one, but obviously they have a main booster to get them up to a certain height, and then that's going to separate, normally lands out to sea, I think, and and then the second stage is going to kick in and continue the journey to get them out into space, or most of the time now it's out into orbit. It's either launching a new satellite or it is meeting up with the ISS, for a payload drop off, and so in that case, maybe first option he's seeing the drop of the initial fuel cell, or it's the second point where, because we are trying to either put something into orbit or get into orbit to meet with the ISS, yeah, it's going to be parabolic, because when we're going into orbit, we are trying to reach escape velocity and hit, and there's so much calculation that goes into this. We want to hit, that perfect point so that we can get into geosynchronous orbit. And obviously, because the Earth is curved, it is a massive oblate spheroid. Yeah, it's going to go parabolic, because that is what's going to initiate us, into getting into orbit.
No,
I've watched time lapses.
They go to a certain point, and then the second stage kicks off, and it takes off, and the third stage it ignites, and eventually, yeah, you do go into orbit on the planet. So I mean, you're not going up straight vertical, and then all of a sudden, doing a 360.
So,
right? I mean, you're essentially heading on up into space in a large looping arc, and eventually each stage you jettison dead weight after propellant plane, and then go forward 17,600 miles per hour.
See, again, this guy's brilliant. Like he knows what he's talking about. He knows what he does. Whatever his job is, he knows escape velocity, and he knows how all the launches work, and he's explaining it really well to Nathan. I sort of I think, this is another thing, is that you can tell when a conspiracy theorist during a debate is backpedaling. Either they're gonna, come out with sort of like ad hominem attacks, or just try to get people triggered, or they're just gonna be quiet for a while. Which, if anyone's watched Nathan Thompson, he's not normally able to stay quiet at all. So this makes me think that his points are just getting demolished. Which, and then again, it's not a proper debate; it's a regular conversation. But for just just a regular person that has been put on the spot by Nathan talking to him, may or may not know he's being filmed. Yeah, this guy's awesome.
Gravitational orbit, do you have any demonstration of that here on Earth, or does it just happen in space?
So to to get in the gravitational orbit, you're hitting that optimum point where your speed is enough to overcome gravity and then get pulled back in by gravity and then continue to overcome it, get pulled in. That is hitting orbit. And yeah, it's kind of hard to show you an experiment right here on Earth. So yeah, the only experiments we can do to prove it are, at orbit altitude, as we start to get into space. And yeah, obviously you guys discount all of that. So, again, it's just, that it can't be proved except at that altitude. But what you can do is you can look up online different satellites and find out when they're going to be overhead. And, with a decent telescope, or even, I think, a decent set of binoculars, or maybe one of your sort of Nikon P1000 cameras, a lot of you guys are using, you can find out when it's going to be above you, and you can take a picture. I think it's Red's Rhetoric has done some fantastic imagery of the ISS going over the moon. He's done it a couple of times as well, and it's just it's so clear, and like there's no way to deny that we've got this giant satellite orbiting the Earth. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of satellites up there, and all the proof you need you can find for yourself. Even if you don't believe in space, if you don't believe in stuff getting launched up there, how can you deny, if you actually went out, took the time to look up when it's going to be overhead and took a picture of it yourself, and actually you're able to make out the shape of it, and clearly see what it is. I guess no conspiracy theorists do that, because that's something that they just can't deny very easily. Once they come up with some excuse to be able to deny it, they'll probably all go out and take pictures of it and then be like, oh, look, here you can see the smudge on the firmament, or, something. But yeah, until they have a way to deny it, it's an experiment that they're not going to do, because everything they do is pseudoscience. It's just cherry picking.
I mean, you can look at projectile motion.
So projectile motion, weaponry, orbits, other stuff?
No, I'm saying you can look at launches of, ballistics. Ballistics will give you a certain portion of velocity and range.
Ballistics do not orbit anything at all whatsoever. So gravitational orbit is defined as mass attracting mass causing one object to circle another object.
Right.
Can you demonstrate that or not?
Now, I just, a lot of the time I find your tone quite rude, Nathan. And, I know in debates it's a tactic, because you know that you don't have a decent argument. I think half the time you probably don't even believe in flat Earth. I think you're just trying to get into all this to just try and make some sort of income. Maybe, maybe that was the whole thing with the flat Earth group and selling your flyers and whatnot. but you're having a, just a cordial conversation with some, stranger that you've met and that has been polite enough to engage in a conversation with you for, a nice lengthy bit of time already. And then just overextending and enunciating that whole nah, just it's just rude, really, isn't it? I don't know. Does anyone else find that? Maybe let me know in the comments how you feel. I find it, that just irks me a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. Just I don't like that. I find that kind of disrespectful.
Well, I mean, you mean on ground? Can I demonstrate orbital?
In reality, like in the Earth, like where we live, can you demonstrate it anywhere? Like, can you go to space and show me?
Okay, so first he says in reality, like in the Earth, as in, like, obviously because they think space is fake. If anything outside of the Earth has got to be fake. And then finally it's, can you go to space and show me? Well, yeah, we've had lots of people go to space to show, the world stuff, and you choose not to believe it. So what's the point?
Can I go to space?
Have you?
No, I haven't been to space.
Have you ever demonstrated gravitational levity?
Well, do you believe that there's
Believe.
an ISS?
Science is not a belief.
The space station is one.
Science is not a
space
belief.
station is an orbital.
All right, you heard it here, folks. Nathan Thompson admitting that science is not a belief. So the next time he's in a debate and calls science, or people that, are following science, to support our globe model, and he turns around and says, like, well, that's just your religion. No, it's not. It's not that we believe in all this science. We just know it to be true. I mean, yeah, we believe it because it has been proven so many times, but it's not a fundamental belief. That's why I hate when they try to call it a religion. No, it's really not. It's not like your flat earth cults, or anything like that. And yeah, you've basically just admitted it. It's this double standard that, that we know you guys have, but it's lovely to actually catch it in your own words, as it were.
I just told you space is fake and violates the second law of thermodynamics.
Our discussion probably isn't worth it.
Because I don't believe in the ISS. How fast does the ISS go?
It's orbital velocity
17,000 miles an hour.
Exactly.
Have you ever gotten anything past 5,000 miles an hour yourself?
All right, so at no point have we heard you, actually ask the gentleman, what he actually does for his job. So, that depending on what he does, that could be the same as just asking any random stranger if they've got anything to that sort of velocity. But what you've got to realize is that 17,000 miles per hour, yeah, it sounds fast, but it's still basically, I believe the ISS just basically moves with Earth curve. I don't know if there's any acceleration or deceleration. I'll have to look that up, but I'm pretty sure it essentially is just moving at 15 degrees. And that's why, we measure rotation in degrees, normally degrees per hour, or RPM, repetitions per minute. Because, yeah, as you get further and further out, it's covering more and more distance, that can seem astronomical. And, and we know that, flat earthers really can't think too much in terms of large numbers. But, it's all inertial reference. It's the same thing with, you guys like saying, well, how come we don't feel the earth spin? And, I think I mentioned it in a previous video, might be the last one I did actually, where, you can be on a plane flying 500 miles per hour and you're not going to feel that, that you're flying that fast. You can still drink without it shooting down the back of your mouth and choking you, or food flying all over the cabin, and then you've only got to double that to get to sort of Earth's rotational speed at the equator. You know, which, and again, because we only feel acceleration and deceleration, you know, that's not a major thing. And then also, you know, I'd love to know how that does feel like sort of in the ISS, like once they get up there, if you know, if like having the 0G sort of effect changes that. But you know, they are properly strapped in. They've gone through, you know, major training, you know, in their sort of launch simulators, and which sort of just take them to extreme G forces. You know, they've got the suits for protection. So that's the main part. That's the part, or that is the part that they have to train to be able to handle. You know, once you're up there and you're moving at a constant speed with no acceleration or deceleration, you know, you're back in an inertial reference frame. You're not going to feel anything. So 17,000 miles per hour just it really doesn't mean a thing. You know, it's small-minded thinking and a misunderstanding of scientific principles and the conservation of momentum.
No, you haven't. So how did the ISS get to 17,000 miles an hour?
By being launched on rockets to that orbital velocity, and over a period of several years, it was assembled by the United States, by the former Soviet Union, by the Japanese, by the
So hear me out on this. You're saying that they built the ISS over several years in space going 17,000 miles an hour.
Yeah, and again, you know, it was sent up by different space agencies in different modules, you know, so there were large sections already, and yeah, it did obviously take time to build, but once they're up there and they're moving at that velocity, you know, when they come out in their spacesuit, they're not, you know, they're still just moving at that velocity. So you know, it's the same as us moving on Earth. We don't feel it because there's no change in acceleration or deceleration. You know, there's no change in momentum. We're just moving with it. So, you know, as they are. And so, yeah, you know, it's the conservation of momentum, you know, just says that as long as they're at that constant speed, you know, you're not going to feel, you're not going to be impacted really. I mean, you know, yeah, you can sort of be impacted by centrifugal force and stuff like that, but obviously, you know, they're in space, that is going to be completely different, and that is something I'll have to look into as well. But you know, as far as the movement goes, yeah, you know, it to be fair, it would probably be like them assembling it, you know, in, you know, a very low air pressure system on Earth, like motion wise. So yeah, you know, I can't see a problem there at all.
Where do they sleep?
They sleep on the ISS.
But they were building it. So how do you sleep on something that you're building?
Well, it was built in pieces. The first, you know, you need to probably look at ISS and they'll tell you about what the integration stages were. The first piece that you launched was power.
So while they're going 17,000 miles an hour, they're connecting other pieces to it in space using gravitational orbits that you can't demonstrate.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few bits to pick apart, I guess, here, but you know, like asking where did they sleep, you know, that obviously it shows you haven't really researched it properly, have you? You know, you haven't looked into how it was built, how it was constructed in space. You know, again, you've got if you're gonna try to disassemble and attack any argument or reasoning, you need to understand that. And if you haven't fully explored, you know, how the ISS was built, you know, how it was launched and how it was assembled in space, you know, then why are you even trying to discuss it? You know, except, you know, I mean, by all means discuss it to try and learn more, but don't try to discredit it when you don't understand it at all. And you know, and then the last bit, just, you know, when you haven't, you know, launched anything into orbit yourself or whatever he said, again, you know, I mean, you haven't been to the ice wall yet you believe it's there, don't you? Or you haven't seen the firmament yet you believe it's there. So you can't really knock something because someone hasn't done it. You know, this gentleman does seem to, you know, have a really good understanding on you know, the things you're talking about. You know, he knows how long it's taken, you know, for the ISS to get built. He knows how fast stuff travels. He knows how, how like escape velocity, etc. Yeah, I mean, this he's done a really good job of just tearing you to shreds, mate. Really, and yeah, just I don't know. You need to find things. You need to understand things if you're going to attack them, and you clearly haven't researched, the ISS or anything to do with space enough. So that might be a thought before your next debate.
I can't demonstrate, but if you won't believe what NASA talks about,
Science is not a belief. Science is empirical evidence.
Again, science is not a belief, which I love that. Next time you say, I need to make a soundbite out of that bit. I really do, because yeah, next time you you do a debate, I might need to send that to a couple people, because yeah, that's that's brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, that's just wonderful. That's made my day.
get a basic physics book, and it'll tell you about orbital velocity. Go get Holiday.
Okay, so
basic college physics.
Get a Mormon book. It'll tell you about Joseph Smith. That doesn't make it real. That doesn't make it true.
Get a Bible. It will tell you about Jesus, God, and the firmament. That doesn't make it real. That doesn't make it true. That's me using your own logic against you. The only difference between the Bible and the Book of Mormon, and then all of our scientific textbooks and peer-reviewed papers, is that the science stuff has been tested and proven or disproven countless times until we get theories that stand the test of time, that work with our model in a variety of ways and help us make predictions based on our model. We can predict earthquakes, we can predict the weather. Granted, it's not always predicted very well, I think, because it is so volatile, it can change so quickly. But for the majority of the time, it is it is accurately predicted, and indeed at the time that we're being shown it, it's very accurate. But yeah, this is using arguments that your stuff can't stand up to itself. And I won't argue for or against a God. I've got no proof that maybe I've got no proof that some sort of divine being didn't just click his fingers and start the expansion of our universe. I believe that with time, we'll begin to understand how that happened. But I see no evidence, that God does exist. So why I choose not to believe in one, I would never criticize anyone on their religious beliefs. I think it is a fantastic thing, as long as it's used in the good way. It's not used to try and attack people. The sense of community, and compassion that you can get from it is indeed a fantastic thing. But you just got to be careful how you wield that power, as it were, of religion. And again, like you just said right there, that you just basically shown yourself that, because all we do have in this world to judge Christianity by is that one book. And as you say, it doesn't make it real, doesn't make it true, doesn't make it false, or unreal. But there's definitely a lot more evidence needed to prove it than, well, you can't really disprove it. It's hard to prove a negative when it's in that sort of context, or the absence of it. But yeah, just it sort of just lets me know that you don't really think before you you know, launch into some of these attacks, you should really be a bit more careful with that one.
We don't stir up everything.
But you're right, because NASA takes all their tax money. They don't want them knowing what's going on, right?
So I think, you know, is it like the federal budget or something? NASA gets 0.5% of the budget. When we look at, for example, I think is the Department of Defense, they get 13%. That's 26 times more than NASA on a daily basis. So, you know, while the amount NASA gets per day, you know, can seem like a lot, especially, you know, when you're looking at it from the aspect of one person, you know, I'm sure any one of us would love to get paid like NASA for one day. We'd be set for life, and, you know, our children's children, etc. But, you know, when you're looking at what they do and how expensive it is, and then you're comparing them to other agencies, you know, they really aren't paid a lot at all, especially with what they're achieving. You know, they're exploring outside of our world, and 0.5% of a budget, so 1/200th of a budget, it is not much at all. You know, so that's that really is, that's another thing that, you know, just I can't stand, because yeah. I mean, there was a time when I heard it and I thought, oh my God, that's a lot of money. But, you know, again, I researched it and, you know, looked at a few things and found out that in the scheme of things, it really isn't a lot of money, you know, and, yeah, again, research, Nathan, research, proper research. Stop thinking you've already won and actually learn something.
Well, I guess I don't want to ask the people right here, but I bet you, a matter of fact, if we ask how many people.
Are you going to say the B word?
I'm going to say, if we ask people.
Are you going to say the B word?
If we ask people, do they believe?
Believe. Do they believe? You said the B word. Yeah, that's cult rhetoric.
Okay.
That's cult rhetoric.
Cult rhetoric. So, all right, and again, you know, I won't slam any Christians or, you know, people of Jewish faith, Islam, anything. You know, if religion works for you, fair play. But, you know, and I definitely wouldn't say that having a belief in that makes it a cult, you know. Granted, like, you know, extremists and stuff and certain things can have, you know, cult-like behavior, and maybe then it could be termed cult-like rhetoric, but just in the grand scheme of things and just as a general thing, belief is not cult rhetoric. You know, I mean, Nathan, you believe, however incorrectly, in flat earth, don't you? And yeah, while I do think flat earth is a cult, you know, I wouldn't you know, say it like that. I don't know. Just, I mean, I disagree with what you're saying, how you're saying it. But then, you know, yeah, maybe when it goes with flat Earth, you know, maybe I can agree with you there. Oh dear, I'm agreeing with Nathan. That's ooh, we're on a slippery slope. We should try and wrap this up quick.
Just for the record, yeah, I believe in a flat Earth too.
Well, yeah, you know, I mean, I assume this person who was filming it was there with Nathan Thompson. I'm quite surprised it's not his you know, Shrek-like friend from Be the Change. But you know, you assume that whoever's filming it, especially since it ended up on his YouTube channel, is going to be a flat earther, because I don't know, it doesn't seem like he hangs out with, you know, anyone but. So I'm not surprised at that at all, really. Well, that's it for the video. It's been a long one. A lot of fun though. Please let me know if, you know, your thoughts on it, or you know, any content you'd like to see me look at, or anything. I am going to start doing, trying to put together some educational stuff, but at the moment, with, you know, like this video here, it's taken me days. This is the better part of a week to put together because of the really low end laptop I'm using. And I've got, you know, I've got Patreon, PayPal, and a GoFundMe set up, which will be in the description if anyone's interested. Please don't feel you have to. I know times are tough right now. Regardless, you know, if I do have to do it all off my own back, I've worked out that I should be good to pick up some new equipment. The main thing is the laptop, which that I should be able to pick up at the end of March. So at that point, it'll be a lot quicker, and you know, I'll be able to start knocking out a lot more content. I'm hoping to do, you know, at least 2 or 3, you know, sort of actual full-length videos a week, and you know, and then eventually, I mean, I like chucking in the occasional little updates from my phone and that, just to let you know, guys, know what's going on. But yeah, you know, again, so feel free to comment. Let me know, you know, if there's anything you liked or disliked about the video. Let me know what you'd like to see me, you know, tackle in the future. And yeah, either leave a like or a dislike depending how the mood strikes you. Please do subscribe if you feel like it as well. And yeah, just hopefully hit the notification bell so you get updated on future content. It will be coming as fast as I can make it, and you know, within, well, less than 2 months it will be coming a lot faster. So thanks for checking out the video. Have a great day and stay safe out there.